The rain had been falling since early morning, soft and steady, as though the sky itself had settled into a calm rhythm. Emma sat curled up on the small wooden porch of her grandmother's old cottage, a blanket draped around her shoulders and a steaming mug of chamomile tea warming her hands. The cottage had always been a quiet place, tucked at the edge of the forest where time seemed to forget to hurry. Rain dripped gently from the roof, tapping a familiar melody on the leaves, and the wind rustled the tall grasses just beyond the path. Every sound was soft, every movement slow. The world was at peace. She stared out across the mist-covered yard. The horizon blurred in grays and greens, like a painting half finished. The porch smelled of old wood and damp earth, and the scent reminded her of the summers she spent here as a child, barefoot, wild-haired, full of wonder. Back then, the porch was her ship, her secret stage, her quiet lookout. Now, years older, she had returned after a long time away, searching not for adventure, but for rest. Life in the city had worn her down, chewed at her energy like a cold wind through cracks in the soul. But here, beneath the gentle patter of rain, she could finally breathe. A small creak broke the silence as the rocking chair beside her moved slightly with the breeze. It had belonged to her grandmother, and for a moment, Emma imagined the older women sitting there again, knitting something cozy, humming a tune that never quite had words. The image made her smile. She took a slow sip of tea and let her shoulders relax. The world was still up there, with all its noise and weight, but here, just for now, it didn't matter. The rain had a way of washing things clean, of reminding her what peace sounded like. As the morning turned into early afternoon, the rain deepened in tone. It no longer whispered, it murmured, as if holding a quiet conversation with the trees. Emma stayed on the porch, unmoving, letting time stretch without urgency. A journal lay open on her lap, its pages nearly blank. She had brought it with the intention of writing something, perhaps her thoughts, perhaps a story, but the words didn't feel urgent anymore. Sometimes, she reminded herself, silence said more than ink. She glanced out toward the narrow garden that lined the side of the porch. Her grandmother's hands had shaped it carefully over the years. Though overgrown now, traces of her touch still lingered, clusters of lavender clinging to life, mint leaves overflowing their borders, and one stubborn rose bush still blooming against all odds. The scent drifted faintly on the damp hair, blending with the earthy perfume of rain. It reminded Emma of old mornings when she and her grandmother would walk among the plants, whispering to the flowers as if they were old friends. Those memories lived in her chest like gentle echoes. A squirrel darted across the yard and paused under a fern, its tail twitching. Emma smiled at the tiny creature, its presence a reminder that life carried on, soft and unnoticed, even in the rain. Especially in the rain. She traced the edge of her mug with her fingers and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel pulled in 1,000 directions. The tension in her neck had loosened. Her breath was slow. Her heart was quiet. There was no grand revelation here, no sudden change. Just stillness. And that was enough. She wasn't healing all at once, but in this moment, she was safe. And sometimes, safety was the beginning of everything. The light began to shift as afternoon slipped quietly toward evening. Gray clouds parted just enough to let a dim golden hue fall across the porch, casting soft shadows that danced with the movement of the rain. The world had taken on the gentle glow of approaching dusk, neither dark nor light, but tender, like a lullaby at the end of a long day. Emma stood for the first time in hours and stretched, her blanket falling to her elbows. Her body was heavy with comfort, not fatigue, a rare and welcome feeling. She stepped toward the railing and rested her palms on the cool, wet wood. The forest beyond seemed even more alive now. Tiny droplets clung to every leaf, catching the fading light like little stars. The scent of pine and moss rose richer than before. The rain had not stopped, but it had softened, now falling with a hush so gentle it was barely more than breath. She closed her eyes and listened. There was no traffic, no voices, no digital hum. Just the rain, the trees, and the faint creak of the porch settling beneath her feet. Her grandmother once told her that this porch was magical, not because it looked like something out of a storybook, but because it gave people what they didn't know they needed. Some people need quiet, she had said. Others just need to feel the world again. Emma understood now. She opened her eyes and looked out one last time, letting the moment settle inside her like a slow exhale. No great plans waited for her tomorrow. But that was all right. Tonight, she had rain. She had stillness. She had come home. And the porch, as always, had been waiting.